You are larger than yourself, comes to you and you're larger than yourself. For people who aren't religious, does one need to have that sort of spirituality to be creative?
You know, I would have answered that differently probably about 2 years ago. But since the book has come out and I've been out and talking to so many creative people, I have a different answer for you. It's an interesting time in the world right now. You know, when I grew up, we didn't talk about religion. You didn't talk about religion to other people.
Or money.
Or money. And, you know, those were two faux pas that were really, you know, off the table. But what's so interesting to me now is that it's a common discussion that people are having, because I think as a society, we are opening to this part of ourselves that was kind of over on the side, and whether that's creative art, and I want to add, you know, all the senses as a creative part. And I really believe now that everyone has it, because I went to a party the other day and I met a bunch of people, and they'll say, well, what do you do? Well, I'm an architect, but I'm really a painter. Or, you know, or they'll say, you know, I'm a chemist, but I really like to cook. And what I'm starting to find out is that it's not religious-based or even spiritual-based. It's more about tapping into something that's way beyond the classic thought of religion. I want to tell you how I came about. I'm actually the one that put this whole panel together.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Arica, for believing in me. I too, obviously, listen to the messages that I get, and John and I are really good friends. Now, and a lot of people would say, how does that work? He's a Catholic priest, and he comes from this very, you know, has its boundaries and its, you know, standards for which it works with. And my book is about going beyond the pews. I'm a minister's daughter. I grew up as a minister's daughter. In the book, I talk about intuition and empathic thought and how it has shaped me. And believe it or not, even though we come from different spaces, we found a common ground between both of us, and Arica included, that it's the creative art that's bringing in this strange void that people are missing out there about spirituality. So when I went to name the project that we are doing tonight, I didn't want excuse me, please don't take this wrong, but the tchotchke words, the spiritual, the soul, you know, all the things that are mainstream now, and thank goodness they are. But I wanted to use a word that was above and beyond where our backgrounds come from and how we found our place to overlay each one of our talents. And that's where I believe that intuition comes from, that unconsciousness. So I watched John. If you'll watch him when he plays, he actually goes to a different place. And I do too when I speak. And it's very hard to stay grounded when you're talking and you're in this what people call zone. And what I really think, one of the healing things that people need to really understand is that in order for us to move to a place of peace and harmony that everybody's talking about, if everybody would find that soul center and start moving towards that really quiet voice inside ourselves. And the book is about that. The book is about, I've been doing this for so long, it's part interactive, which means I've done a lot of lessons on the intuition, as we call it, or empathic thought, how each person can find their way through the 5 senses. And then the other part is, where are we going from here? There's a lot of collaborative efforts like this that's going on that we can find the common ground. And I think the arts, and that's why I brought in Arica, Because everybody's voice, their empathic thought, their intuitive knowing comes from a different place. I'm a writer. I've been in radio for a long time. I basically write a show every week. And this is my debut book, and I have 2 more coming. But it was a different kind of writing for me. I don't have the same experience that John has. I actually see the book before it came out. So I worked backwards. And thank God I had a publisher that let me have my own creative ways, because it was very different. But my own knowing, I knew that I had to write the book backwards. And I knew that I had to write the book the way that it was written, in a certain way. So it took a lot of trust between the person that I was working with and the people that I work with and myself. I have a harder time getting the words out. I sometimes look at John and I see how envious I am of him, that it just comes pouring out of me. I think as a writer, there's a tendency to struggle a little more, because you have to get the perfect words to describe what you want. And I'm not saying that John has an easier time of it, but it just seems, and at least in the subject I'm writing, there's 1 million books in the world written about it right now. So how does one stand out, but yet say what you need to say of a thing that's coming to you? I think one of the things when you're in tune with your own knowing, your own gifts, the hardest part is following through. Because everybody tells me, oh, I get a lot of messages, or I feel a lot of things, or I know when someone, and then I'll say, well, did you do the message? Well, no, because that means I have to hurt feelings, I have to move away from people, I have to change the way I'm doing things. So to lead a life that's open and empathic is not an easy thing, and it's not about religion, and it's not about spirituality. It's about following that inside of yourself. In the book, I talk about the 5 senses. For a long time, people separated your intuition or your intuitive thought and empathic voice inside yourself into a separate category. Well, and I just thought that was the most ludicrous thing I had ever heard in my life. Because how can you separate your intuition when it interlaces everything you do? It's, when you meet a friend, you don't have an intuition part of you that goes, oh, I think that's a friend. You feel it inside kinetically, or you connect verbally, or you communicate through sound. So in the book, I talk about how each one of us can find what triggers you to find that own empathic thought. And I think it's important that everybody have that creative note to themselves. I put chefs in there, all the different senses, no matter what you're doing. And so when John and I were talking, I really saw the elements, the 5 elements in the world, and please, I try to memorize them, but my mind just kind of goes with so much stuff. There's earth, wind, fire. What's the other ones? Air. Okay, metal. But if you look at different ones, there's a thing called the void process. I know we know about the 5 elements that everybody sees, but in some cultures, there's one that's called the void. And what's amazing to me is if you read the definition of the void, it's about earth. It's about that unspoken energy that kind of no one really can pin down. They call it the sky, sometimes they call it the heaven. So in some cultures, they already believe that we all have that empathic part as a part of the elements that we use. and how we use those elements, especially the one that I concentrate on, which is the void one. How does it come out in your life? Now, the way I do things is that as a writer, I think a lot of times we're loners. I think sometimes creative people have a tendency to separate themselves. When we separate ourselves, you have to do that on purpose, because in order to be plugged in, I call my energy like plugging into a light socket in the wall. When I am plugged into the light socket in the wall, I can't have distractions. I have to be able to hear exactly and get the messages that I'm getting without any interference. So I think a lot of times creative artists from the outside world look like they're loners, or people that like to be alone. The reason I do that is because I need to hear clearly what I'm doing. I need to hear, I need to experience, and I need to listen quietly. One of the things that people are doing nowadays is meditation. And what they're trying to do is plug into that light socket in the energy source within themselves. Everyone has it. Everyone has to figure out. So for me, it seems like sometimes people think I'm a snob, or that I'm not available. But you have to unplug from the world in order to really connect to your source. So that is how I do a lot of writing. And like John, there's no time. I mean, it may happen at 2 o'clock in the morning. My kid thinks I'm crazy that I don't have a normal job. But I don't know any creative people that really have normal schedules. I've just never really been around them. We have to adhere to what the rest of the world is doing.